Good afternoon. I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive, and I'm here with our Director of Operations, Joan McDonald, and former County Legislator Ruth, resident of the village of Bronxville, as we launch our new task force to deal with cybersecurity issues in Westchester County. The issue of cybersecurity has become very prominent just in the last few years. Obviously, as we have more of our society reliant on the internet and on a variety of different technological platforms, we see, just as we have in every other form of our life, that there are people who are unscrupulous who will use that platform for their purposes. And we've seen examples of various entities holding not just governments and businesses, but utilities and other agencies and entities hostage with their ability to tap into the electronic system that is critical for the operation of any business. So in creating a cybersecurity task force, which we talked about a few months ago, we indicated we'd be doing this. This is our chance to roll it out. We did want to delay this announcement until Governor Hochul would make the announcement that she made yesterday about the initiative, along with Mayor Adams, and we're very appreciative of her leadership in this area and setting up a consolidated effort that will be based in Brooklyn that will have the benefit of dealing with municipalities as well as other entities in a way that we think will help us professionalize our efforts. Here in Westchester County, we have had an information technology department, IT department, if you will, headed by Marguerite Byrne, and has done a very able job in helping us navigate through all of the twists and turns that come in the modern day with technology. But technology changes so fast that it represents a constant effort to stay current, even as we use the structures of county government to do the same tasks year after year, the way we manage our bus system, the way we manage our sewer treatment system, how we handle our Department of Social Services responses with the various constituents that need those services, and on and on and on. And we are a large regional local government as opposed to being a statewide or a national government, so our resources are limited in certain ways. But as we look to the opportunity to more thoroughly analyze what our responses are in cybersecurity, we have the benefit of a very professional department in information technology, but I want it to be consistent with things that we have done during this administration in the past by making sure we had a citizen involvement in that process, and in this case by creating a task force that will be populated by those individuals who have some experience in business or technology and who are willing to sit voluntarily, there's no compensation here, and talk through policies, procedures, things that might lead to legislation, things that might lead to changed funding priorities, and a host of other things that we think will be helpful and companion. If you look at the county government and how it's structured, we have certain operating departments. All those departments report into Joan as Director of Operations. We have a Department of Corrections, but we've created a Corrections Advisory Board to work with the department, again, interested, involved citizens as well as the professionals who run the department. We did the same for the Probation Department and the Probation Advisory Board. We have historically had a Parks Board in Westchester County that interacts with our Parks Recreation Department. We've historically had a Police Board, which we've expanded and we look at as well as an important tool for us in having a citizen involvement along with the structure of that government. So having a cybersecurity task force which will interact with our information technology department is consistent with the same philosophy that we've shown over the length of our administration, and on a timely topic as seen just by the governor's leadership yesterday in the things that she announced. And one of the tasks of this task force will be to look at that initiative and help us determine how those things mesh together. We have a tremendous asset within our county government in many, many ways with Joan McDonald. Joan agreed to serve as Director of Operations 4 years ago in the very beginning of our administration, and as I've said many, many times before, I have great pride in knowing that she is doing the job in Westchester County, having been the State Commissioner of Transportation here in New York State, the State Commissioner for Economic Development in the state of Connecticut. She has had assignments with Metro North, with the City of New York. She has worked inside the state legislative process and state government. She has a wealth of background in operational issues, and amongst other things, she has experience in the cybersecurity area, having served on a national federal task force along these lines. So I'm going to ask Joan to give us a little outline of how she has previously worked in this area and what types of concerns she has. Then I'm going to introduce the chair of this new task force, Ruth, and that will follow. But first, Joan McDonald.
Thank you, County Executive. It's indeed an honor to be asked to be the technical advisor on this cybersecurity task force. As the County Executive mentioned, in 2015, President Obama appointed me to the National Infrastructure Advisory Council, where I served through December of 2020, and our mission was to look at the various infrastructure areas that had threats or lack of security implications. And one of the projects that I was involved in is in 2019, we took a look at what some of the federal areas of government that needed to be improved in cybersecurity. And their government structure is much larger than our county government, but I'm sure that we will be able to use some of those lessons learned. And a lot of that focuses on just a situational awareness for the people that work in government to be aware of what some of the cybersecurity attacks could be and how to recognize them, to make sure we have up-to-date and best-of-class training for our employees. And there are some lessons that we can learn from our partners in the utility arena, in the banks arena, that have put some of these practices in place that were included in that study that I participated in, and I hope to bring those ideas to the table and assist the cybersecurity task force. So I look forward to this because I think it is a great initiative that the county executive has put in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Next, I'd like to introduce you to a person who should be familiar to many of you. Ruth Walter, who is a resident of the village of Bronxville, has served in the Westchester County Board of Legislators, and she has represented Bronxville and a large swath of the city of Yonkers. But she has had a number of other areas of public involvement. She is a small business owner right in the downtown business of Bronxville, has been active in their local Chamber of Commerce, active in the Bronxville Rotary Club. She has also, over the course of her time, chaired the Bronxville Library Board and has been involved directly in village government in some additional responsibilities. So she brings a wealth of experience in the private sector, the not-for-profit sector, and the small government and countywide government sector. She's been tasked with coming on to chair this committee because she has shown, to me, sufficient experience, not only in the things that she personally has done, but in the ability to manage a group of other people. When you take on the chairmanship of any board of any sort, you have to be able to not only come with your ideas about what you want to see happen, but to try to get the most out of the other people that are serving alongside of you. And as we're going through the process of identifying appointments to this committee, Ruth's input now will become very important as chair as we try to identify a diverse and full group of colleagues to serve with you on this board. And Joan's involvement and some other individuals who will be serving as ex officio responsibilities, we think will round out the expertise of that. So certainly to give us an idea of some of her general thoughts about this area of public policy, we're very grateful that she's agreed to continue her service at the county government. I give you Ruth Walter.
Thank you, County Executive. Thank you so much. Thank you, Joan, and thank you, Deputy County Executive. He's here as well. Cybersecurity is in the news. We hear about ransomware attacks, consumer data stolen, phishing, even a foreign government hacking a local dam. The news is filled with stories of disinformation, cyberbullying, doxing of public officials. While our digital lives are essential, they are also vulnerable. According to a report by IBM and Ponemon Institute, the global average cost of cybercrime is expected to peak at $6 trillion annually, driven by the proliferation of ransomware attacks. The report takes into account hundreds of cost factors from legal, regulatory, and technical activities, loss of brand equity, customer turnover, and a drain on employee productivity. Yesterday, Governor Hochul convened a cybersecurity action team, and last month, President Biden did the same. Today, Westchester County joins the growing chorus of government, private sector, and individuals looking to clarify best practices, identify threats, and make our workplaces, homes, and infrastructure safer from cyber attacks. As a county legislator from 2020 to 2021, I've seen how effective a task force can be. From issues of police reform, wrong-way driving, opioid addiction, and more, County Executive Latimer, with his team, has been flexible and responsive to changing conditions on the ground. Truly, this is the best of shared services, when the county takes the lead on issues that each municipality, nonprofit, small or large business, and individual in Westchester faces every day. I've always been interested in technology, and over my career have learned a lot about tech systems in different environments. For my own small business, I implemented a cloud-based point-of-sale system that uniquely responds to our business needs. When I was the court clerk in the Village of Bronxville Justice Court, I found and corrected a reporting error that cleared hundreds of backlog tickets. As a young person, I was a network administrator, database manager, and even Y2K programmer. Computers are essential tools for our business and our personal lives. This is a fluid environment, with bad actors involving their techniques to keep up the pressure. With yesterday's news of Russian aggression against Ukraine, we know that tanks are not the only weapons of war. Twitter-based experts are warning, shields up. This task force could not be more timely. I look forward to partnering with Joan McDonald, Westchester County's Chief Information Officer, Marguerite Byrne, her excellent team of tech professionals. I look forward to learning and disseminating best practices and to investigating potential policy changes and legislation that can adapt to our changing world. Our residents will be well served with a focus on cybersecurity in 2022. Thanks to County Executive Latimer and his team for making this possible, and for all those who serve on the task force for the betterment of Westchester residents and businesses alike. Thank you. Yep.
Thank you very much, Ruth Walter, now the new chair of our Cybersecurity Task Force. I'd like to note that we're joined today in our press conference by the Vice Chair of the Board of Legislators, Nancy Barr. Thank you for being with us here, and please convey our appreciation to the Board of Legislators for the role that they play and will play as we go forward in these issues. The Board of Legislators will have 3 appointments to this committee to join the 6 appointments that I'll be making as the executive, and we expect to have a work session fairly soon with as many of those members as have been confirmed. Ultimately, all of the appointments will go before the Board of Legislators for their confirmation, and they have the opportunity to interview those individuals and make some assessment. We've created this task force using an executive order on my behalf, and what we've often done is use the executive order, which can be immediate, to create something, and then over a period of time, the Board of Legislators may determine if it is an entity that they want to establish on a more permanent basis, and then they can enact it in by law. And then, of course, it's not at the whim of a future county executive as to whether this function continues or not. I think once this thing starts to roll and we see what the productivity level of it is, that'll give us a better idea what the longer-term picture will be, and all of that will be, I think, pretty helpful to us. I'd like to highlight as well that our Deputy County Executive, Ken Jenkins, is with us. We were not able to be joined by Marguerite Byrne from the Information Technology Department, but Ken has, in his Deputy County Executive responsibilities, interacted very closely with that organization that, again, as I've said before, we're very proud of. And so I wanted him to come to share a few thoughts before we close out our conversation. Ken Jenkins, Deputy County Executive.
Thank you, George. This is certainly another wonderful opportunity with County Executive George Latimer's leadership, bringing together another task force to be able to deal with an issue of the day. The Cybersecurity Task Force will make sure to listen and see all of the best practices out there, as Joan McDonald pointed out in her comments, with all of the work that she's done at the federal level, especially by President Obama's appointment in another cybersecurity task force, and Ruth Walter and her experience not only as a Y2K programmer, but more importantly, being able to see the interactions both for inside the government and outside the government, another opportunity to do shared services. While I am an African prince, I know that there's been some phishing things that have happened to me, specifically here in the county office building, where many people have had those phishing emails go out. And our IT department, Marguerite Byrne, Lennox Harris, and all of the folks in IT were well on top of that, and not only stopping those emails from moving forward, making sure to have practice sessions and go out there and do their own exercises with people to make sure, at least inside of Westchester County government, people are protecting themselves as best as possible. And there's those kind of things that happen more often than not that people don't see. Our IT department, Marguerite Byrne and those folks have tremendous connections with our federal partners, with law enforcement partners, and trying to ensure that they're staying on top of their game. But as Ruth Walter pointed out, it's fluid. The situation continues to be an aggressive point that we have to continually fight. And because of County Executive Latimer's leadership, we were able to help some municipalities when they had some unfortunate things that have happened along the way, where we in our IT department and our service partners were able to help those municipalities get out of their particular situations and get back online in what we would think is a reasonable amount of time when they were subject to some ransomware. That's going to continue to happen, and that fight always is going to be there. And again, the Cybersecurity Task Force, led by Ruth Walter, initiated by County Executive Latimer, with many partners, including the brilliant Joan McDonald, is going to make a difference for all the people of Westchester, and we're looking forward to all of the work that they're going to bring out. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you very much, Ken. And Ken raises an important point that will be part of the agenda that Ruth and the committee will look at, which is not just what do we have to do to protect the corporate entity of the county government, but how do we interact with all of the other governments, the other 45 municipalities of Westchester County, and then any of the other public utilities or public entities that interact with government. They may not be officially a government entity, but they interact. They deliver a service that people are accustomed to, and then, of course, would be subject to some type of security breach. So that will be part of the discussion and part of the recommendations, I suspect. And as we've had in other areas of public policy, and Ken pointed out in this area as well, the county government is prepared to work with any of the cities, towns, and villages in a cooperative fashion to deal with issues that might arise as they come up. But we also know that the players in the game, the bad actors, as you call them, Ruth, are very technically skilled individuals, and there's no real benefit to underestimate what their potential for damage is. I also think it's appropriate for me, as we get ready to take questions, to, in areas of hard content, say less rather than much, because we're in an area where security is what we're trying to accomplish, and it might not be as helpful as to be less transparent than I normally am when I try to answer a question in great detail and provide you the underpinning of our thinking. In this situation, I think we need to have the committee working with the department to identify the topics and then sort of determine which of those topics are best addressed publicly with all public input and which ones represent some need for security outside of the public scope, because the folks who are looking to pick up information search relentlessly online for any little tidbit of information that can be used for their purpose, which is not our purpose. So with that, I'm going to turn to Carolyn Fortino, our Deputy Director of Communications, to ask her if we have some questions from the press.
Yes, we do. We have 4 questions from Peter Katz at the Westchester County Business Journal. The first is, to what extent did warnings about possible Russian retaliation via cyber attack for Ukraine sanctions influence your decision to move ahead now with Westchester's cyber task force?
Well, I think we're all deeply concerned over what might happen out of the Ukrainian-Russian conflict. And as I've commented before, it looks to me as if there's a clear aggressor in that conflict and a clear victim state in that conflict. And we know that when we impose sanctions, we will irritate the aggressor, and the aggressor has resources to be able to strike back outside of the traditional warfare means. But I must tell you, we made the decision to have the Cybersecurity Task Force, Peter, months ago, and we wanted to get through the budgetary process before creating this entity. And in so doing, we had conversations. I went back with Ruth over the last 60 days, a little less than that perhaps. When we saw that Governor Hochul was going to make an announcement with Mayor Adams, we did not want to muddy the waters. We had a similar situation happen, for those who follow, back when there was the police reform effort. We had made an announcement that we were going to move forward on a police reform committee that dealt initially with the education function, which was a county function. And Governor Cuomo came out, and of course, the superior level of government commands the agenda more than the lesser level of government. So we adjusted what we did into that. And so we thought to delay this announcement long enough to see exactly what the state would do and how we might mesh in. So I think we're all on a timely topic, And I'm not particularly concerned who went first or who went second, but we are concerned about what might come out of the Russian-Ukrainian conflict, what that may mean for us. And so obviously we're anxious to get to work as soon as we can.
Okay, the next question is, will the county be working with businesses and organizations such as in providing security guidance or sharing intelligence?
We think that could well come out of the efforts that will come. I don't want to presume the nature of the dialogue going forward. I would suspect, just as one generic example, because we do it in other areas, that the work of our task force, in harmony with our professionals, will want to look at doing things like tabletop simulations, where we talk in real-world terms about how we would respond to that. We currently do that in police and in emergency services functions within the county. What would happen if you had an active shooter in a school setting? And then around the tabletop program are a variety of school superintendents or principals of schools. Or how would you handle the impacts if we got hit head-on by a Cat 5 hurricane? You'd have municipal officials and utilities involved in that discussion. That is one of the functions we have in our Emergency Operations Center, where we have sufficient room for representatives of a wide range of public and private and not-for-profit entities can meet to use that as a discussion model. So, as an example of how we would work with businesses and or other entities going forward, it could be in a series of tabletop exercises that would help us professionalize and walk through best practices. And if we can do something like that, that could be an outgrowth of that cooperation. Some of the cooperation may involve things we've done in other parts of government, where the county will take on a professional, and then we take the responsibility for bringing a person on with professional consultant skills. We don't bring them on as a full-time employee, but with consultancy, and then we make that person available to municipalities. We do that in advancement of the Opportunity Zones program, where we've contracted with a firm that has that expertise in-house. We don't have that expertise in-house, but we make that individual available to those communities that have Opportunity Zones so they can get best practices. We might do that again, but I don't want to jump ahead to the conclusions of what the task force or the department might do. Those are possible outcomes, I think, that show the potential cooperation between government, business, and other entities.
Do you anticipate that this will become a permanent part of what county government does?
Well, that is the question that, we sort of smiled from across the room, Nancy Barr and myself. We think this initiative has great merit, and in creating it as an executive order, it exists at my discretion for the term that I serve. If we see that this entity really does show strength and an added advantage, and I think it will, then we have the opportunity to make it more permanent by having the county legislature consider whether or not to create it as a permanent board or commission. We have had that happen with our Correction Advisory Board, our Probation Advisory Board, but that becomes the public debate that the legislature has as to whether they see the value in this or not. I'm pretty confident that Ruth and her leadership and the people that we put around the table will have robust discussions that will be helpful to us. And as we see that go on, then at some point in time, and we'll dialogue with the board leadership, do we make this a permanent part of our boards and commissions world? And that could very well happen, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. I think we'll see the content and the result, and then from that, the decision of permanency or not would be made.
Okay, and the last question is there a budget line for the task force? How will it be funded?
Currently, there's no allocated money for this. We have sufficient money in the county budget in a host of different areas that can cover what expenses we may determine are necessary. We might, for example, want to survey municipal governments for the sake of this discussion. And there might be some cost attached to that survey. If it's a one-off project like that that has a price tag to it, there are certain ways we can fund it. What we haven't done is built in full-time paid staff to do just this function, and in so doing, we start to talk about having an office that would be under the aegis of IT. Right now, we'll work under our existing IT department function and structure and the resources, and where we see a project that has merit to it, if it requires funding, we'll look for funding somewhere within the structure. If we have to reach a certain point of need for funding, then we go to the Board of Legislators for a budget transfer. I don't anticipate that in the early stages of this. I think whatever things we come across that has a financial element to it, we'll be able to absorb it within our existing resources. But things change, and if they change, we'll certainly be public about it. And again, anything that requires a structural change to our budget will have to go before the Board of Legislators. They will, in open session, discuss it and debate it. I don't anticipate that at the early stages of this. Any other questions? If there are anyone else from the media that's in touch, please give us a call, 995-2900. You can ask to speak to Carolyn Fortino, Lisa Reyes, who's here as well. We'll be happy to work with you and channel whatever of us can be helpful to you in answering that question. And once the Cybersecurity Task Force has structured meetings, we would expect at this point our boards and commissions are being encouraged to stay in the virtual platform. Even though the COVID numbers have dropped dramatically, we'll be ready for some in-person meetings. We don't expect that to start until March. We haven't fully filled out the committee yet, so we think we'll probably have an internal work session, informal work session. Then once we announce, and we won't do a press conference, once we announce the other members of it and it's all public, we will both submit their appointments to the board for their approval, and then the committee can start to meet, and hopefully by then we can do it in person. That would be the next step to see in this. And then, of course, whenever there's a suggestion for legislation that the task force develops, then that would be codified by the law department, presented to the Board of Legislators. We had that with our LGBTQ advisory board, which wanted to identify the banning of conversion therapy, which has been subsequently banned by the state, but we acted first in 2018, and that action came as a recommendation from the board that did that. And so we view that recommendation process as a valid one, and we'll see how it plays out as we go forward. So if there are no other questions, I want to thank again Joan McDonald for her service once again in serving as ex officio with this new committee, the leadership of Ken Jenkins as our partner as Deputy County Executive, and particularly to thank Ruth Walter for re-entering the public field, this time now as chair of this committee. We look forward to your work. We hope that we'll be able to work cooperatively together and provide some results that will be helpful to the Board of Legislators, to the operating department, and to our executive team. With that, I'm George Latimer, County Executive. Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you again soon.